In Syria, CIA operative Isabel calls her boss Joe after her cover is blown because of a tattoo. A large explosion occurs near Joe's base, and an armed militia attacks. Joe requests air support to help clear the area, but as the situation worsens, she orders a drone strike, struggling with the weight of her decision, knowing it will lead to Isabel's death. In Oklahoma, we meet Cruz, a former stripper stuck in an abusive relationship with a man named Edgar. After an intense confrontation, Cruz escapes and eventually joins the Marines. She excels in her training, impressing her superiors with her determination and physical ability. Cruz explains that the death of her mother left her lost, angry, and indifferent to life until she found a new purpose in the military. In the present, Joe is debriefed about her drone strike on the ISIS camp. She feels conflicted, knowing her instinct to trust Isabel led to a tragic outcome. At home, Joe is distracted, emotionally detached from her family, and struggling to reconcile her decisions. Joe then heads to Fort Bragg to find a new recruit for the Lioness program, a covert CIA unit designed to infiltrate female circles of high-value targets. She chooses Cruz and subjects her to a rigorous test to ensure she has no tattoos, a sensitive reminder of what happened to Isabel. Although Cruz initially takes offense, Joe remains impressed by her toughness. Together, they fly to Kuwait to prepare Cruz for her next mission. Cruz's target is Aliyah, the daughter of Asmar Ali Amrohi, a militia leader. The following day, Cruz, despite her initial hesitation, meets Aliyah at a store, and manages to quickly befriend her, successfully blending into her new role as a covert operative. Joe meets with Caitlin Meade, discussing Cruz's mission. Aliyah is now in New York after visiting Paris, and Cruz has successfully initiated a friendship with her. Joe suggests putting Cruz through intense training to ensure she's fully prepared, and Caitlin agrees but advises moving Cruz from Fort Bragg to avoid accidental encounters with Aliyah. Meanwhile, Joe's personal life is explored. Her partner, Neil, a doctor, faces a heartbreaking case involving a young cancer patient, Maddie. Neil, overwhelmed with grief, delivers the tragic news to Maddie's family, but the father reacts violently, unable to process the loss. At home, Joe and Neil's daughter, Kate, is suspended from school after a fight, causing tension. Neil feels drained by his job and the constant loss of young patients. But Joe comforts him, encouraging their daughter to be more understanding. Cruz, on the other hand, struggles with insomnia and goes for a run, only to be kidnapped and subjected to brutal torture by Joe's team. This harsh treatment is part of a training exercise to test Cruz's resilience under pressure. Despite being pushed to her limits, Cruz endures the ordeal, furious with Joe, who wanted to see how she would handle the stress of having her cover blown. Joe even reveals that Cruz's abusive ex, Edgar, is dead, adding to Cruz's emotional turmoil. After enduring the torture, Cruz violently lashes out, but Joe stops the exercise. They later discuss Cruz's mission to get closer to Aliyah's father, Asmar. Joe explains that Asmar's motives are rooted in greed rather than religion, and that Cruz must be ready to take him down without hesitation. The emotional and physical demands are clear, and Cruz is reminded to hold out until she can be extracted. That night, Joe's team goes to a bar, confronting Cody for his brutal role in Cruz's training. During the commotion, Aliyah calls Cruz, who lies about being in a car accident. They agree to meet the next day, and Cruz continues balancing her dual roles. Cruz receives an invitation to a party from Aliyah in Chesapeake, Maryland. Before heading out, she gets final instructions from Joe, who emphasizes how to act around Aliyah and her friends. Joe makes sure Cruz's car is bugged and ready for tracking, while she discusses with Caitlin the possibility of Aliyah intentionally luring them into a trap. At the party, Cruz is subjected to scrutiny from Asmari's team, with a man assigned to monitor her. Aliyah warmly introduces Cruz to her friends, who dismissively refer to Cruz as Aliyah's next project. When Aliyah sees Cruz's bruises while changing for a swim, she calls a doctor, concerned rather than suspicious. The doctor quickly realizes Cruz wasn't in a car wreck, assuming she's been in an abusive relationship. However, Cruz skillfully manages to avoid further suspicion. Meanwhile, Joe meets with Kyle, a former acquaintance, who proposes an off-the-books mission to extract a prisoner marked for death. Joe reluctantly agrees to lend him 3 team members for the operation, though her team is uneasy about the side mission while Cruz's cover is at risk. Tensions rise at the party when Cruz encounters Sammy, who drunkenly tries to force himself on her. She fends him off, and security intervenes before things escalate. At home, Joe deals with her rebellious daughter, Kate, after finding her with a boy. Joe's partner, Neil, has already established rules with Kate, frustrating Joe, who feels out of the loop due to her constant absences. Back at the party, Sammy is sent away after his behavior, while Cruz continues navigating her precarious situation. Joe learns that Aaliyah is taking Cruz on a private jet, catching everyone off guard. Cruz discreetly sends the plane's details to Joe, who ensures they are followed, keeping a close watch on the unfolding situation. Cruz's relationship with Aaliyah continues to deepen, with the two spending a lot of time together in East Hampton, Long Island. While on a swim, Aaliyah confides that she isn't excited about her upcoming marriage to Asan, even though he seems like a good partner. She feels there's more to life than marrying for convenience. Meanwhile, Joe's team works on figuring out why a Saudi royale like Aaliyah is marrying a Kuwaiti national, suspecting there's more to the arrangement than love. Joe sees the wedding as the perfect chance to capture Asmari, but she's concerned about the difficulties of keeping track of Cruz if the wedding takes place abroad, especially in Dubai. Joe learns that her team, who had assisted Kyle with an off-the-books mission, may face legal trouble because of casualties and lawlessness during the operation. Furious, she confronts Kyle for his recklessness. Fearing these distractions could jeopardize their primary mission, Caitlin and Byron also question Kyle, who eventually admits using Joe's team, but manages to lessen the fallout by offering the CIA an opportunity to capture Al-Qaeda operatives in San Antonio. Back home, a crisis unfolds as Joe's daughter, Kate, gets into a severe car accident. Neil rushes to the hospital, only to learn that Kate is pregnant, and the pregnancy must be terminated due to her injuries. Neil is devastated, feeling that Kate has betrayed his trust, and he struggles with the news. At a high-end club, Cruz joins Aaliyah and her friends, while Joe's team watches closely. Joe, distracted by Neil's call about Kate, decides to keep a closer eye on Cruz. When Cruz notices Joe at the bar, she intentionally flirts with a stranger, unaware he has drugged her drink. As Cruz begins to feel the effects, the man attempts to take her away, but Joe's team intervenes just in time, preventing an assault. Joe ensures the man's silence by taking his DNA and ID. Cruz, still groggy, reveals to Joe that the wedding will take place in Dubai. The team grows concerned about whether Cruz can maintain her cover, especially as Joe and Caitlin learn that their operation is in jeopardy due to the team being caught on surveillance footage with Kyle. Cruz wakes up in a CIA safe house, confused about the previous night's events. Tucker reassures her that nothing serious happened, but Cruz remains unsettled, especially when she notices her underwear is missing. Meanwhile, Joe visits her daughter Kate in the hospital. Kate's pregnancy has ended naturally, sparing them from a tough decision. However, her recovery is uncertain, and Joe confronts Kate emotionally, pleading with her to stop self-destructing out of anger. It's a raw moment where Joe admits her failings as a mother, hoping it will lead to healing between them. Caitlin and Joe head to CIA headquarters, where Deputy Director Westfield reprimands them for an unsanctioned mission involving Kyle. Despite breaking protocol, the intel gathered is actionable, and a team is already in San Antonio to capture Al-Qaeda operatives. Kyle leads the mission, with Joe overseeing the tactical operations. Westfield warns Joe not to deploy any assets without his approval again, and Caitlin is tasked with overseeing the mission to ensure everything runs smoothly. Joe's team voices concerns about the strict rules of engagement, particularly that they cannot fire unless fired upon. The situation escalates when it's revealed that the terrorists are armed with bombs. Cruz and Joe join the field team as the stakes rise. A last-minute change allows the team to kill the targets due to the bomb threat, and while they successfully neutralize most of them, one activates a suicide vest, forcing an evacuation and the involvement of a bomb squad. The operation's secrecy is compromised when the media leaks details, putting future missions at risk. At home, Errol shows Caitlin a news report about the mission, and she decides to organize a family dinner, likely inspired by Joe's struggle with Kate. Joe, back at the hospital, learns from Neil that Kate has been given morphine for her pain. Meanwhile, Cruz receives multiple missed calls from Aaliyah, who is clearly worried about their friendship. When they finally speak on FaceTime, their bond deepens, and it's clear they are attracted to each other. As Joe walks toward Neil at the hospital, she is interrupted by a phone call, leaving the weight of the ongoing mission and personal struggles lingering. Cruz drives to the Hamptons, where Aaliyah has invited her to stay at the beach house. Upon arrival, she's surprised with a luxurious spa day, which feels foreign to her. Meanwhile, Caitlin, Byron, and Joe are summoned to the White House for a debriefing. They learn that Secretary of State Mullins will attend, representing the president, a sign of how serious the fallout from the border extraction and San Antonio executions has become. Before Cruz heads inside, Joe advises her to stick to the truth when talking to Aaliyah, altering only names and places to avoid slipping up. Aaliyah's growing trust in Cruz is crucial, as it brings them closer to Asmari, their real target, as Cruz navigates the unfamiliar spa experience. She realizes Aaliyah's innocence and naivety, making her trust all the more significant for the Lioness team. Joe's QRF team experiences a scare when teenagers break into their safe house, but it turns out to be nothing more than a petty theft attempt. Meanwhile, Caitlin and Joe grow frustrated after waiting 11 hours to be called into the debriefing. During the meeting, the White House expresses anger over the CIA's recklessness, particularly regarding the San Antonio mission. Although Caitlin, Kyle, and Joe initially deny involvement, Byron admits the CIA's role but insists that no proof remains, diffusing the situation. They also discuss Cruz's mission and the possibility of sacrificing her if necessary. The operation is officially named Yellow Jacket, with the code word for taking out Asmari being Mabel. As Joe navigates the political fallout, Cruz's mission remains under intense scrutiny. Aaliyah opens up to Cruz about her lack of control over her upcoming marriage to Asan, expressing cultural pressures that prevent her from canceling the wedding. Cruz suggests calling it off, but Aaliyah is overcome with emotion, feeling trapped by tradition. At home, Joe reconnects with Neil, who shares the positive news about Kate's recovery, signaling a possible new chapter in their marriage. The night ends with a surprising revelation. Aaliyah's wedding will be in Mallorca, Spain. Overwhelmed with excitement, she kisses Cruz in the heat of the moment, and Cruz, caught off guard, kisses her back before pulling away, realizing the complications that lie ahead. The tension builds as Cruz contemplates the emotional and professional mess she's stepping into. The team at Langley works frantically to finalize plans for eliminating Amrohi, bypassing official channels to set up a team in Mallorca. Meanwhile, Cruz and Aaliyah go shopping in New York, where their unresolved feelings surface after their kiss. Aaliyah takes Cruz to a hotel room and they have sex. Cruz feels guilty and conflicted about her mission and emotions, texting Joe for help. Kyle, who's been tailing Cruz, lets her into Joe's room, where the two women have a heart-to-heart. Joe reassures Cruz that Aaliyah's fate is already sealed and reminds her that Amrohi finances global terrorism. Cruz returns to Aaliyah, but after hearing her father won't attend the wedding, Cruz reactivates her transmitter and relays the information to Joe and Kyle. At the base, Joe and Caitlin confront Cruz, furious that she nearly compromised the mission due to her feelings. Cruz admits her emotional struggles and inability to separate them from the mission. Joe insists on moving forward, urging Cruz to clear her mind and focus on the task. Cruz decides to head to Barcelona with Kyle, while Joe and Caitlin continue to disagree on the mission. At home, Joe faces her daughter Kate's recovery from the car accident. Kate expresses concern for Joe's safety, showing a new emotional connection that deepens their bond. Caitlin says goodbye to Errol, who reminds her that eliminating Amrohi is vital for regional stability. The episode ends with Joe showing Cruz footage of bombings financed by Amrohi, solidifying Cruz's resolve to complete the mission. The finale begins with Cruz arriving at Barcelona Airport, where she prepares for her mission in Mallorca. Joe gives her 2 emergency bracelets to communicate in case of danger, as Amrohi's security will jam signals. Cruz is tracked by Kyle until she's taken by Amrohi's security. At the White House, Byron, Caitlin, and Joe are overseeing the mission from a boat, with Byron in the Situation Room. Despite the plan, the politicians pressure Byron to cancel the mission, citing Amrohi's significance in the global oil trade and the risks of provoking Russia. The only alternative is a bloody clash with Amrohi's security. In Mallorca, Ehsan greets Cruz coldly, knowing what happened between her and Aaliyah. He threatens Cruz, but allows her to meet Aaliyah. They share a private moment where Aaliyah reveals that Amrohi will attend the wedding, giving Cruz a chance to kill him. Cruz and Aaliyah share an emotional moment, with Aaliyah afraid of losing her freedom. Meanwhile, satellite images confirm Amrohi's arrival, and back home, Kate struggles with nightmares about the accident. She calls Joe for comfort, but tension rises between Joe and Neil. Later, Aaliyah visits Cruz in her room, distressed after telling Ehsan she doesn't want to marry him. They kiss, but Cruz pulls away. Ehsan soon discovers Cruz's true identity and confronts her. In a violent confrontation, Cruz kills both Ehsan and Amrohi. She triggers the distress signal, alerting the QRF team, who successfully extract her after a dangerous chase. The mission concludes with Cruz informing Caitlin of Amrohi's death. Joe and Cruz have a tense confrontation, accusing each other of turning them into monsters. Joe returns to her family, possibly starting fresh with Neil.